We are waiting. I'm just going to write no, and we are live. Okay, I believe that we are live right now. Hi, everyone, and welcome to our new episode of Friends with Sixth Senses from At Home with Sixth Senses. My name is Anna Bierstam. I am the wellness pioneer holding these, what can we say, live talk shows every Sunday. And today I am incredibly excited to be here with Boyd Barkley. And he's a wildlife and literacy activist. He's an author, and since childhood, he has been living with lions, leopards, snakes, elephants. He has survived things like black mamba encounter, malaria, a vicious crocodile attack. But also we're going to talk a little bit about Boyd's personal life and a challenge when it comes to a personal crisis of finding purpose. And that is very exciting. He's also studied psychology, ecology, and also supplementing his education by learning martial arts in Thailand, hiking through the jungles of Amazon, and also working with renowned trackers. So he is not our normal kind of city guy, I would say. And he's right now in the middle of Londolozi, South Africa, in the jungle, I would say. So very warm welcome to our Friends of Sixth Senses today, Boyd.
Oh, thank you. What a pleasure to be here with you. I'm very excited.
We are too. And, you know, the world has been in solitude, or not in solitude. We've definitely not been in solitude, but in confinement, and we have, you know, been in quarantine. But I know that you took it just a little step further by actually living in a tree for 6 weeks. Why did you do this? And tell us a little bit about it.
Yeah, well, thank you, Anna. I mean, the word quarantine originally comes from a Venetian word that means 40 days and 40 nights. It's something like quarente. And so when this COVID crisis hit, I was at my home out in the wild eastern part of South Africa. And suddenly, like I think happened for many of us, everything changed. Everything on my calendar canceled. All the work that I had scheduled for the year was suddenly gone. And in that space that opened up, I realized that for a long time, I've been very interested in why did, in all the mystical traditions, in all the spiritual traditions, why did the mystics go into nature? Why did the Buddha go into nature? Why did Jesus go? Why did at some point when you read about all the mystical accounts, they went out alone to be in solitude? And it was like suddenly there was this enforced time when we were all in solitude. And so I decided that I would go out alone and live in this big, beautiful tree that has a kind of treehouse wooden deck in it on the banks of the river. And I would live there alone for 40 days and 40 nights. And my goal would be to try and understand from inside the experience why the mystics went to be alone, why they went into nature, and what happens to your state of consciousness when you're alone in nature. Like, who do you become? And then finally, because I'm a tracker, I grew up learning the art form of how you follow an animal, how you track an animal through a wild place. And I've done that for years at our safari business, and it's a photographic safari business, so not hunting. We would track animals, we would find them, and then people would have an opportunity to view them and then leave them totally unharmed. So the space opened up, and I went out with some gear, and I dropped myself off to live in this tree for 6 weeks. And it was one of the most deep, transformative and powerful experiences that I've ever had.
Didn't you feel lonely?
You know, one of the things that happens is absolutely in the first few days, there's a certain kind of, I think of it as a shedding, and you feel yourself really anxious about, things come up that you thought, I've got to do this, I'm going to be alone, I'm going to feel lonely, this isolation is scary, you know, all this anxiety came up, all of this feeling of being alone. But then slowly you start to move through that, And as you move through that, as I say, I call it shedding. It's like all of these layers of fear and anxiety and the need for connection and fear of nature, they start to come off you. And what is replaced is a different way of focusing and a different way of attuning. And so what I would say, the kind of the steps of the first 3 steps of the experience were shedding, like almost like getting all of the anxiety of modern life off me. I don't have my phone. I can't check my email. I can't call anyone. I can't listen to a podcast. I can't tune into something on the internet. Like, can't watch a Netflix show. It's all falling away. And all of as it starts to fall away, the next thing that happens is what I call attuning. So you start to, instead of being attuned to the news, what's happening in the world, the latest crisis, you start to tune in to the environment around you. And it's very interesting, although you are alone, everything around you is alive. And so you start to feel like you're in the company of other creatures. You know, the tree is alive, the river is singing a little song. Every day, elephants would come to the river to drink. So I would be sitting up in the tree at about 10 in the morning, and I would hear the sound like whispering. And what it is, it's the sound of branches rubbing against the side of the elephants as they walk through the bush. And then suddenly they would appear at the water's edge, and they'd be drinking and throwing water over themselves. And very soon, and then like I started to get to know certain birds would fly up and come and roost in the tree. And so it was like I was living up in the tree and these birds were living up in the tree. So I felt like I had neighbors. There was a troop of monkeys that would come every day around mid-morning. They would travel down the river through the trees, and then they would pass me, and I got to know them. And so what starts to happen is you start to experience yourself in connection with this living, with all of this life around you. And so the loneliness falls away, and what replaces it is this feeling of I'm alive, it's alive, it's intelligent. The natural world has a rhythm, it has a pace. There's so many incredible processes happening that you start to notice. And as you start to see that intelligence, then you start to feel yourself as a part of that. So after the attuning, it goes shedding, attuning, and then the third thing that happens is what I call stepping into relation. And that is where it gets really mysterious, because it's like you can feel the presence of everything around you. So when you feel the presence of the tree, it's like the tree is alive, the tree is there. And in some ways you feel its presence and its stillness, and that helps you touch a stillness inside yourself. When you see the monkeys all playing with each other, jumping on each other, pushing each other off the branches, you see this playful energy and you feel a playful place inside of yourself. When you look at the stars at night, it's just this, this infinite galaxy, like literally infinity, impossible to understand, a true mystery. And you look at it and you realize, I am a mystery too. And so what happens is you start to understand that what is happening around me, this beauty, this mystery, this intelligence, this enchantment, this wonder, it's all around me, but I am a part of it. And I think that's why the mystics went to nature, because you can't miss that you're connected to something really infinite and beautiful when you are out there. And so
That's so interesting. And I also think if we look at it, because you talked about shedding, it's a bit of a, we talked about that the other day, where in my shaman work as well, one of the way of the serpent is about shed skin like the serpent, and just shed stuff, shed roles, and then you get connected, and then you have a relationship. And past this, I think that this whole thing with connection is going to be so much more important. And it doesn't necessarily always have to be connection to a person, but it could be to the universe, to nature. And we also talked the other day about trees. And I shared that I have a tree that I often go to, I get inspiration from. I have a special relationship to that tree, and I've had for years. And I know that we have a lot of viewers right now from all over the world. So please let me know if you have any questions. And And I actually just got a question as well. So I'll post that straight away, but let me know where you're from, let us know. And if you have questions, if there's anything you want to know, also let us know if you have a tree that you're a friend with and what that tree is and how your relationship would love to do that. But the question is, how do we do this? How do we do this shedding the connection, the relationship when we're not in the jungle?
Well, I think all of it, it's such a good question. All of it is possible. And it's about where we put our attention. So I would say that the first part of shedding is realizing that all the things you have to do in your life, all of the anxiety of modern life, you just have to start to notice there's always something to do. There's always the next thing that you have to get onto. The whole sort of energy of it is next, 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 next. And so the first part of shedding is a stillness practice. We have to slow down. We have to stop wherever we are. We have to start to develop something that slows us down, because modern life will tell you you can never slow down. And if you do, everything is going to go past you and you're going to miss everything. And the actual truth of shedding is that when we slow down and let everything go past for a while, we realize what we're actually looking for is here. It's inside of us. And so step number one, wherever you are, stop. Just slow down. It can be yoga. It can be meditation. It can be journaling. Switch off your technology for periods of time. Get rid of the phone. Close your email. Notice if you feel the impulse once it's switched off. I want to tune in. Get rid of it. Make a fire if you can, or light some candles. Get into a different kind of light and just let yourself slow down.
I just want to go in there and say, one of the things that we work with as a shaman practice as well is that you actually write down on each piece of paper. So several pieces of paper. I kind of thought about that when you talked about the fire. And you write down the roles or what you want to shed, what you want to get rid of. And then you actually contemplate, and then you give that to the fire so it gets burnt and it actually, you shed it equally. So that is a really additional, I would say, thing that you can do.
It's a beautiful practice. And I really love your emphasis on roles, because we get stuck in our role. I'm the one who helps everyone. I'm the one who has to achieve all the time. I'm the one. And then these roles become identities and they lock us. But that's not who we truly are. What we are is underneath that, more dynamic, freer. And actually the definition of a functional family, for example, is that everybody can change roles. And the more of an ability we have to, sometimes we can be the strong one, but sometimes we can let that go and let someone take care of us. And it's that dynamic that is actually more wholeness. So couldn't agree more. Write down, what is my role? Write down all of my rules for myself. This is what I have to do to be okay. Write down, just take time to go inward. So that's the first part of shedding, stillness, get in touch with breathing, go underneath all the things that modern life tells you have to do. Get into firelight, get into candlelight. There's something about that is very soothing for the soul. Next is attuning. So wherever you are, be aware that life is we're either attuned to technology, and it's addictive. It wants to pull our attention. So we want to be tuned into our phone, tuned into the news, we have to be aware that there's something almost like that has a momentum to it. It's pulling us in. But what do we attune to? Let's attune to relationships. Let's attune to quiet, so when we light that fire, we light those candles, let's put our attention into that. Let's attune to nature, whether it's, the ledge of flowers in your apartment or the park or one of your pets. Attune, where your attention goes, your life goes. Attune to nature. So attune to stillness, attune to nature, attune to things that are actually alive, living, attune to relationships, attune to connection. Start paying attention to where you feel connected in life. And that will naturally start to bring you into relation. So we can do this anywhere. It was just for me living out in a tree, it was amplified. And what I saw is that when I put my attention on life around me, I felt more alive. And when I put my attention on machines, I felt more mechanical. And in fact, I actually felt less. So that was one of the things that emerged out of it.
I think that right now we're in this time and place on Earth, which is a gift. We are in a fantastic retreat at the moment, at a pause, and we might have a lot of fears or worries within us, but there's also a huge amount of, when we have that, there's always opportunities. So I think it's a perfect time right now to do that, shed the roles, get connected, look at relationship, and then hopefully you will find what will bring more purpose to your life or who you want to be. But you're also, I mean, you've done this, we talked about that you had a crisis in the introduction. And for everyone that's just joined, I'm here with Bod Bharti, who is an animal tracker, but you're also a life tracker. And can you tell us a little bit about what does that mean actually to be a life tracker, and how does one track one's life?
Yeah, well, let me give you a little bit of context with a little bit of backstory. So I grew up on a wild piece of land in South Africa. And from the time that I was very young, I was apprenticed to the Shangaan trackers. And they're a tribe here who are famous for their ability to track animals. And so I grew up doing that and grew up learning the art form of how you follow the faint prints of an animal across the land. Then when I was about 16, a number of things happened to me. I experienced some violent trauma. South Africa was at a very unstable time, and so I saw some violence. I had some physical trauma. I had my leg was badly injured. My family went through some difficult times, and as a result of that, by the time I was just coming into my sort of early life in my 20s, I had become completely frozen. I was depressed, and I didn't know how to move forward. I was stuck. And one of the things that you'll know when you become traumatized, the feeling is that you're frozen. You don't know how to move forward. You want something different, but you don't know how to create it for yourself. And I was lost inside of that feeling that sometimes in our life we run into: anxiety, depression. And what happened was I was working as a safari guide, and this incredible woman called Martha Beck, who was this amazing healer and life coach, came on safari. And on about the third day, I could see we had a great connection. We were talking. I was being a professional safari guide, showing her the animals. And then on the third day, she looked at me and she said, as a true healer can, she said, I can see what you're holding. And I can see that I can see that you're stuck and that you're lost. And it was this amazing thing, and you'll know this from your shamanic work, when someone sees the truth of what's going on inside of you, especially that you've been trying to hide it, be a young macho man, I just broke open and I started to cry. And, she held me, and there was this funny moment where I was standing with my rifle next to my safari truck, and this amazing woman was just holding me, and I was crying. And then she started to teach me the art of how we heal, and one of the ways we heal is, like, one of the deepest ways to heal our trauma is to discover our gifts and share them. And so she started to connect me with the process of healing. And as I started to heal, I started to realize that this art form tracking that I had grown up with, strangely, it had all of these incredible tools that we could all learn from: how to find our path, our purpose, our mission in life. And every time I was watching the trackers, I could see what they were doing was like a set of instructions for finding your way. And
how do you do that?
Yeah, I mean, I know it's incredibly strange, but this is one of the things that happens when we start to really go after our purpose. Strange, discordant things start to come together and make something very unique. So suddenly a South African animal tracker and a safari guide starts to become a life guide. But so I'll give you an example. When we track a lion, for example, one of the first things that happens is maybe it roars somewhere out there in a vast wilderness. Now, you don't know exactly where it is. You don't know where it's going. You don't know what it's doing. But the first thing a tracker does is they go without knowing. They start. And so when you arrive at a place in your life where you feel frozen or stuck, or you don't know how to move forward, so many people have said to me, when I know exactly what the next thing to do is, then I'll do it. And I say to them, no, the process of becoming, of finding our path, it begins with saying, I don't know. I don't know how to do this. I don't know who I'm meant to be. I don't know where I'm going, and that's okay. And so the first part of the tool of the tracker is to relax and build a relationship with not knowing. So
That's so
that's
interesting, because if I look at other, like Taoism and other, if I Lao Tzu, for instance, he said the journey of 1,000 miles starts with the first step. So what you're basically saying is that you have to get on and take the first step without knowing what the map looks like.
Exactly. And in the East, they also talk about the idea of beginner's mind. So you let go of all of your ideas about how it should be, how you think it should go. And you start to just say, like, I don't know, but I know something is pulling me forward. I don't know how yet. But it's a very interesting thing. When you relax into not knowing, it's like life starts to open up.
But you just said something very interesting there as well, as the beginner's mind. I just want to, because that is an important thing, is that to have a childlike, curious mind and not think that we know everything when you go on this journey, but just be open to anything and be curious, and whatever you knew, just kind of throw that away.
Well, you see, like that idea to me is key to the tracker. You open your mind up. Now, curiosity. One of the amazing things about curiosity is that you will be naturally curious about things that are essential to you. Things that are something that deep down inside of you. Those are the things your curiosity naturally goes to. And so I think of curiosity as the way that life pulls us to a vision, to a destiny beyond what we could think of for ourselves. So one of the tools of the tracker is absolutely follow your curiosity, because it'll pull you towards a very essential part of yourself. The next thing that you'll have to do if you're going to be a tracker is you have to teach yourself to see your track. And they call that developing track awareness. So I'll give you an example. When I was a little kid, my tracking teacher, he would take me to a game path. It's a path where the animals move between a clearing and the waterhole. And he would say, walk down, look at the tracks, and tell me what you see. I would walk down and I would come back and I would say, I can see where a herd of antelope walked past, and I can see where a squirrel ran across the path. And he said to me, young boy, he used to call me young boy. He said, young boy, go look again. And I would go back down the path and I would look again. And this time I would say, I see where an eagle touched down and its wing just touched the soil and it tried to grab a mouse. And I can see where a leopard walked, but the antelope walked over it. And each time I walked down that path, I would see more tracks. And it was like I was tuning my attention. And that idea, the idea that there is information there, but you have to tune yourself to see it. When I started coaching,
would you say in modern world that it's a bit like awareness, to being fully aware in the present?
It's absolutely like awareness, but it's a skill that you can develop. And in the path of discovering what's your path, you have to teach yourself to see what's important to you. And in order to do that, you will need to develop a different way. Like, you will need to understand how you know when you see a track. And so, for example, what I say is, when you are developing your track awareness, you have to tune into your body. It's not the rational plan of what I should do, but it's like when you see someone and you feel this expansive energy in your body. When you meet someone and you feel yourself going, you, but it's coming out of this energy. When you're in an activity that makes you forget about time, when you are involved in something that almost like the rest of the world fades away, those are the tracks that you are teaching yourself to see, because those things that make you, that sort of format you like that, those will be things that are taking you to deeper parts of yourself.
So when you see something or you do something, if you think about something, it could be something as simple that we do. Should I have fish or chicken for dinner? And you kind of just, in the shop, you just feel what you want. Is that the kind of feeling where you just kind of like let your body almost decide and not your brain?
It is. It's a skill that you can develop to learn to read the way your body speaks to you.
How do you develop that skill? What do you need to do?
Well, the first thing you do is start paying attention to it. So one of the things that all of the listeners can do is, over the next few days, notice what happens to your body's energy around certain people. And what you'll find is that the minute you see certain people, you feel energized, you feel expansive. And then other people, you'll start to feel a little bit like this. And you will literally see your body is talking to you. And it's just like a tracker, it's just a discipline of attention. Most of us, are so busy being social that we are just in the idea of, okay, I've got to be nice now, I'm meeting these people. We aren't paying attention more deeply. So that is the first thing. Like, just watch what happens to your body. When you're doing certain activities, your body will do the same thing. Certain activities, you'll just feel expansive into them. You'll feel like they are feeding your energy. And then other activities, you'll see even the second you think about them, it'll be like, oh, gotta go do that. So the first thing is we start to actually develop awareness. And maybe, Anna, I should just say here, the sort of the foundation of what I'm talking about, here's the sort of the core of it. I believe that all of us are made up of two parts. We all have a social self, and the social self, and we all need the social self because we live in society, but the social self is about how we present ourselves to the world, how we present ourselves to society. Then underneath the social self is what I would call the wild self or the essential self. And this is a very deep and core part of ourselves. Now, mostly what happens is that the social self starts to kind of crush the essential self. It starts to overrun it until we are living pretty much in our social self. The social self will tell you all the things you have to do, all the things you should do. And in fact, if you say, well, I have to do that, you're in the social self. And part of the process of when you arrive at the place where you say, I want more out of my life. I've done all the right social things. I've done all the things that I was meant to do, but I still don't feel like it's fulfilled me. Well, now you have to become a tracker of this wild self. And this wild self speaks in the body more than it speaks in the mind. So really tune into the body track.
Interesting. And we have a question here is asking that even should you listen to your body even when you meet people online? Is it equally physically as online?
Yeah, I believe it is. It's a very strange thing. There's like an instinctual energy in the body, and you will get to learn it. At first, it might take a little bit of time to learn to read it. But for example, now if someone asks me to do something, I get a head yes. Then I check in with my body and I make sure I get a body yes, and then I will say yes. So you learn to read it, and sometimes I'll say like, oh, I feel drawn to this. It's not quite that. I can feel it's more like this. So it becomes a kind of like process. You learn it, and it gets more sensitive, like an instrument. As you put more attention on it, it gets more sensitive.
And we have another question. Just
yeah,
right in here before we go is also a guy asked, what was the most, and we take it back a bit to the tree experience here, but what was the most difficult with living in a tree for 6 weeks?
Well, I will tell you the most difficult thing was rain, just because like once it starts to rain, it gets you. And actually, I would say this, like the one of the most mystical and deepest encounters that happened is I was in a very big storm, and this thunder, I mean, just one of the biggest storms I've ever seen. The thunder came over, and I was in the tree, and I had this tarpaulin wrapped around me, and then I had a blanket wrapped around me, and I was just sitting there, and the rain was pouring down, and the lightning then started to come down, and you just hear this like incredible sonic boom, and then lightning would come down, and it was, I think we live with a lot of anxiety, and we live with a lot of like nervous energy, but not often in our adult lives are we just truly afraid, and I was just truly afraid. But I also felt myself like immersed in this massive, just something so big. And I knew that there was nothing I could do about it. So my only option was just to surrender and have faith in, in whatever was happening, and let myself just be in the present moment, just be with it. And so it was very scary, but it was a very deep mystical experience for me in some ways.
Thank you. So we're just about to wrap up, but before we do, tell us a little bit about, well, I'm going back now to tracking your life. You talked about being just emptying and shedding, of course. but also that tracking, understand the wilderness in your body, learning to understand when your body says yes and when it says no. Anything else before we end? And I also want to say to everyone listening is next week, we will have Boyd do a live meditation from the jungle, the first one ever, I think, in the world. So we're super excited, and then stay tuned for next week's schedule to know more about that, because I think that's going to be an absolutely transformational experience. But before we end this and hopefully continue the journey on tracking for a long time together, but what else can someone do who's wanting to track your own purpose in life?
Well, I would say two things. I would say, one of the things the trackers do when they lose the track is they will go back to the last clear track they had. So they will go back and they will say, when was I last know that I was on the track? And so one of the things you can do is you can get out a journal and write about the last time you absolutely knew you were on track in your life. And then as you read it back to yourself, say, okay, what was I doing? Who was I with? Why did I feel on track at that time? What was the activity giving me? What was it about that made me feel like I was on track? And what you're going to find as you do that is you're going to discover a lot of really interesting things about this essential wild place inside of you that I'm talking about. One other thing that I would say too is trackers always work with the first track. And so in a huge wilderness, all they need is the first track, then the next first track, then the next first track. And one track at a time, they can start to find their way through this unknown, huge, wild place. So I would say to you that the journey to your purpose, it's not going to be about big changes. Ask yourself, what is the smallest, consistent changes I can make every day towards what feels like it takes me towards more aliveness, is more nourishing, feeds me, brings me joy and laughter. And just every day, ask yourself, how can I make this day a little bit better? How can I step towards something that feels a little better, more essential, more comfortable, like it feeds me, more alive? And if you make a lot of little steps every day, you are going to track your way over time to a more essential life, a life that actually feeds you and nourishes you.
Thank you. That is fantastic. And there's been so much information during these 30 minutes. And just to summarize to everyone, is it's about shedding, and you can do that through various of practices that we've talked about, but shed stuff that you don't want to have. And you do that is best when you're in silence, or do yoga or breathing, and just kind of let everything go, and then go into connection and just connect with what is there. And also relationship, we talked about how do we track our life, and it's about being quiet, but also listening to what our wilderness, our body does. And we talked about several things that you can do that. And I also want to say a couple of things when it comes to having a curious mind, because I think that's almost the most important part. There also been science shown for longevity and aging well, is that one of the absolute most important thing is that you have a curious mind, and a beginner's mind as well, where a curious mind is also letting go of things that you think you know and be open to it. So I think, and then the last part that you said that I think is crucial as well, is those small improvements. You don't have to climb Mount Everest day one. You can just take the first step, and then the next one, and then the next one. But do something. And again, science is showing that if you do one new thing, even try a new spice or take another road to school or to work today, one thing per day means that you then start changing so many things in your life to be more positive. So there's so much newsworthy. And we're also looking with Boyd to do other things, because I want to go and learn with you how to track my life. And so we're looking at cooperating in a number of ways. And when we reopen in our location, we hope to invite Boyd to have courses on how to track life, because I think your experience is a rare one, and I would love to learn more.
We're going to have so much fun once we get open and going again. Yeah, thank you.
Well, thank you so much. And it's been absolutely lovely to have this chat. Please, everyone, stay tuned for next Saturday, I believe it is, when Boyd is going to do a live meditation from the jungle. You cannot miss that. And then we'll have more parts. And we're also going to post down below in the comments so you can connect with Boyd online and see what he's done and look at what's out there. So thank you again. Have a absolutely lovely Sunday and be well.
Great, everyone. Cheers.
Cheers. I am just going to end.